Thursday, February 11th, approximately 7:30 a.m. And I will call roll for the record. I'm just going to go through my screen because I don't have my hands on the agenda currently. Frank Cannon.
Here.
Thank you, Frank. Kate Hanley.
Here.
Frank, I resisted calling you Sue, just so you know. Pat Nelson.
Here.
Charlie Parker. Can't hear you, Charlie, but I see you, so I think you're muted. Court Booth.
Here.
Thank you, Court. Matt Root.
Here.
Chris Popov.
Here.
Hi, Chris. Matt Johnson.
Here.
Good morning, Matt. Russ.
Here.
I'll resist the urge to call you Higgins because I know that's my coworker. And I've done that to you like 8 trillion times because it's burned in my brain that way. John Harris.
Here.
Good morning, John. Justin Cameron.
Good morning.
Good morning. Heather Bout.
Here.
Good morning, Heather. Lori Hunter.
I'm here. Thank you.
Good morning. Who am I missing that's off camera? Anyone? Jared?
Jared's
Hi,
here.
Jared. Good morning. And I think that's everyone. If I missed anyone, my apologies. Speak up, please. So good morning. And I'm going to, Kristen, do you have the agenda? Can you pull it up for me? Because I'm having a morning and I can't find my headphones nor put my hands on the agenda. So bear with me. It's the week before February break, so everything's like swirling in my brain.
Don't worry, Don. We all get it.
Oh my gosh, it seems worse these days. I think it's COVID brain / February brain. So my apologies.
Is Stephen Crane on the call?
Oh, I didn't see Stephen.
Okay.
Oh, there he is. He's connecting now.
Okay. And we should note that we're recording this. Is everybody
And
okay
it
with
looks
that?
that way, yes. Hi, Stephen. I just took roll. So for the record, you want to indicate your attendance?
Stephen Crane, tardy, here.
You could have just said here. Good morning. Thank you, Kristen. All right. So looks like we have some minutes to approve. I haven't seen any comments. If anyone would like to give any, feel free to do so now. It looks like we have some older minutes to approve. We've got May 14th, 2020. We have December 10th, 2020, which is a little more recent, and then January 7th, which would have been our most recent. So I believe all of these were shared around. If anyone didn't get them or if anyone has comments, please feel free to speak now. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion for approval if there are no comments.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from May 14th, 2020, December 10th, 2020, and January 7th, 2021.
I'll second
Okay,
that.
Heather, thank you. Any seconds?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, so why don't we do a roll call approval on that motion? So Frank Cannon.
Yes.
Pat Nelson.
Yes.
Charlie Parker.
Here. Yes.
Are you approving the, okay.
Yes, sorry.
Heather Bout.
Yes.
Stephen Crane.
Yes.
Kate Hanley.
Yes.
Court Booth.
Yes.
Matt Root.
Yes.
Chris Popov.
Yes.
Matt Johnson. I'm going to assume you weren't at the May 14th, so I'm going to let you vote how you vote, but feel free to abstain if you need to.
Okay, but you can approve minutes that you haven't attended, so sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Russ?
Yes.
Justin Cameron?
Yes, I was not at the January 7th meeting, but yes.
Yeah, we missed you. I understand you were busy that day.
Yes.
Lori Hunter?
Yes.
Thank you. And am I missing anyone off screen? Where'd John go? Is John still here?
I'm here and I say yes.
Excellent. And Jared?
Yes.
Thank you, Jared. All right, great. Okay, let's move into some subcommittee / vice chair business. So we asked last meeting if there was any interest in anyone taking on the role of vice chair. I haven't heard from anyone. I've put some feelers out to see if anyone's interested. I will entertain anyone who might be interested in that role. Pat can speak to the responsibilities if she'd like to. That was her previous role.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thanks,
as I said at the last meeting, I took on that role sort of expecting to be help with kind of managing details and, you know, making sure minutes are out and things like that. But that all really does happen through the project manager. And what I found was that the chairs were, and between the chairs and the project managers, things were just getting done. And with all the subcommittees, things were getting done. And I didn't have to do much. So I did some research on what the role of the vice chair would be for any of the town committees in our town and in other committees. And there's really not much about it, other than it would be someone who would be willing to step in, like I did, if one of the chairs has to step down or if there's no chair available to chair a meeting. And it would be someone who would be willing to, you know, keep up with all the emails and, you know, stay very current with the business of the meeting. But other than that, it's not particularly heavy. It wasn't heavy lifting until I became a co-chair. And it became a different story, so.
Thank you, Pat. So with that, I would just like to ask if there's anyone who'd be willing to offer to step into that role, or if there's not, I'm going to plead a couple times for volunteers to maybe step into roles if there's willingness to do so. We would appreciate it, Pat and I and the rest of the committee. So anyone, this won't be the first time you hear me beg this morning, because there may be other roles that we need to fill. One suggestion might be, I know everyone thinks they're, you know, they're part of the group and we are so appreciative of everyone's time. I do want to recognize that there are quite a few town appointees, whether they're Town of Concord employees or school committee members and Board of Selectmen, and recognizing that there are only a handful of community members. And I would love if any of you are willing. We're a small percentage of the overall group, and I know that the expectations are a little bit different. And so I'm just pleading if there's anyone who's willing to help out. It's like Pat said, it shouldn't be a heavy lift. I will also ask for when we get to the finance subcommittee.
I have a question though, which is, I mean, is it really even all that common to have vice chairs of subcommittees? I mean, can't we do this on more of an ad hoc basis? If indeed we come to that point and need a replacement chair, I guess, because at the beginning of the meeting, if you have a quorum, can't they decide who will chair a particular meeting if a chair is not available?
There's nothing that requires us to have a vice chair.
Yeah,
and,
so
my recommendation that when we met last time was, I didn't think we needed to replace the vice chair, but there was some concern about making sure that we had that kind of person to step in just as I stepped in. But man, I think you make it, that's, you know, we do have a lot of chairs of committees, a lot of committees, and we could, you know, we could do a temporary designate as needed.
Which is fine if that's how folks feel. So
I think the committee would have to vote not to replace the vice chair. I think we'd have to approve that.
Well, given that doesn't appear to be any volunteers, why don't we go ahead and do that? I'll entertain a motion to do so.
Can I, before we do that, Dawn, can I, this is Stephen.
Sure.
I don't think you need to vote to not fill it, it can remain vacant.
Okay.
And I would suggest that we just don't address it today and see how things unfold. Because if you take a vote to not fill it, then to fill it, you have to take another vote to change your mind, or the committee to change our minds. And so what I would just say is let's take no action due to, no nominations, and just kind of leave it open-ended. And if the need materializes, we can come back and, or if somebody has an awakening and decide they want to be the vice chair, we can address it at a future meeting. That's just my suggestion.
Good point.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so is everyone? Go ahead. Were you saying something?
I was just going to say, so we just say no action and move on to the next agenda item.
Sounds that way. I'm fine with that. Okay, so Heather, I'm going to ask you to give an update on the communications subcommittee.
Yes, I will. And at the same time, so I wanted to update everybody in terms of structure and then a little bit in terms of what we're doing. Is it okay to do all of that at once now, Don?
Yes, please.
Okay. So last time we were here, everybody will remember, I was recommending a change in structure. There was a bunch of concern over it. And I said that I would put some more detail together and come back. In the meantime, I did a bunch of research and looked into it and decided that in the end, it wasn't worth coming back with a whole new structure for us to spend time debating if there was that much concern over it when we can operate the way we are. So I'm not actually recommending anymore a change in structure of the subcommittee. That said, we do need a change in membership since Pat stepped off. And I don't plan to do the whole thing all by myself. So I have had a volunteer in the form of Kate Hanley, yay, thank goodness, who will join the subcommittee with me if somebody is willing to nominate her. And I am also very open to any other volunteers who might want to be interested and be nominated today. I will give you a little spoiler alert that I'm going to start asking everybody to participate in this very shortly, as in right after this meeting. So don't sit back on your hands too much without volunteering because you're going to get pulled in anyway. So why don't I do this before we do nominations and voting the change? Let me just give an update on communications and what we've been doing and what we're going to do forward. We're implementing a few new things as well as expanding on things that we were doing before. So one thing that we really wanted to do, especially now that we're getting so active and we're in a stage where we do really count on the community feedback, is expand our outreach right now, both in terms of outgoing communications and collecting input. So a few different things we're doing. As many of you have seen, I sent out a list recently of various meetings that we're having. We are starting to do a bunch of listening sessions, and this will be throughout this month and next with various groups in town. Several of them have already happened, and basically the invitation is out to do more. So for instance, we were with the League of Women Voters recently. There's a listening session coming up with the Commission on Disability. Lori will be talking to the Rotary. There was a listening session specifically regarding the gymnasium. There was one regarding auditorium and performing space. So we've had several already, and we've actually reached out to all town committee chairs with an invitation that we will visit any of their committee meetings to give an update and obviously answer questions and then take feedback. So this is a big piece of what's going on right now is listening sessions. I want to send a huge, larger than huge shout out and thanks to those who have been going to these already. The chairs have put incredible time into this. Lori has put incredible time into this. Kristen Olson, so many listening sessions and so much feedback coming in, and it's really, really helpful, and it's a big time commitment. So it is greatly appreciated. We are getting to the point where we're going to have kind of standard updates and standard sets of questions to ask. And so other people could take some of that role sometimes and go to these listening sessions. So that's one place I'll be looking for volunteers and if you don't volunteer, you might get asked anyway, is willingness to go do a listening session, to give our update, to ask the questions and take the feedback in. I think that'll be really important in our process here. Another thing we're doing to keep committees and residents updated is that our chairs, Pat and Dawn, are going to start going to the monthly chairs breakfast, which is a monthly morning event with all of the chairs of town committees. So one of them will try to go to each chair's breakfast where they'll be able to update live all of those committee chairs and answer any questions there, obviously. We're also implementing a change to our distribution list in how we get it. Hopefully all of you received last night the announcement of our next forum. I'll get to forums. That is going out now to 2 different distributions lists. One is basically an end user list, and that's what you received. It's an announcement of what's happening. We'll use it for updates, we'll use it for events. That list already existed, but now we're separating it into 2 types. So that is the end user list. We also have a separate list that is basically, I'm calling a point of contact list. In addition to just the message that, for instance, like this one, we are having a forum, here's the date. We're providing that excuse me, information in a few different forms for points of contact for various organizations and groups to then share it with their groups. So that list includes all of the town committee chairs again, heads of organizations, newsletter contacts, all kinds of heads of organizations and groups in town. And they are being asked to share the information with their relevant group. So it's sent out with a headline, a text blurb that they can use, a full attachment of information, as well as a link to that full information hosted on our site, so that they can take whatever pieces of that are useful for them, either throw it into a newsletter, throw it into their daily or weekly bulletin, forward it directly to their committee or town. They can use it however is easiest for them, but it gives heads of groups an easier way to share this out with everybody they have. Similarly, I'm going to ask all of you to do the same. So here's the first ask that is as of right after this meeting. Please take that email that you received, that was the announcement of our forum, and forward it to everyone you know. Here's where the building committee itself can start to be really helpful in this, is we use all of our personal contact lists, and we take that and we forward it to everyone we know and say, this is happening. We want the community to come out. Please attend, and please forward it to everyone you know, so that we use kind of the email tree to get the word out also. As everyone knows, and I've said before, it's relatively easy for us to hit school families because Laura can send a district message and boom, everybody reads what she's sent. The rest of the town is very difficult. To that end, Erin Stevens is also helping us more now and getting involved, and she will be taking these announcements and everything and posting them and sending that out on social media. We'll make sure it gets on the calendars and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot going on to make sure that our information is getting out there and that we can collect. Sorry, was that a question someone had, or just background? Maybe not.
I do have a question, which is,
go for it.
Are all of the committee members on the point of contacts list?
That's a good point. Right now, you know what, I need to go and see.
I mean, what I'm thinking of is that some of us are members of other committees, right? We're the liaison, or we're members of other committees. And for if this is going to a different member of our committee than us, we could be out of the loop, and that could be a problem.
Very good point. You know what I'll do is I'll make sure that we are on both lists. I'll put the entire group of ours on both lists. So when there's an event or an announcement, you as a building committee member will get 2 emails. One will be targeted to an end user and one will be targeted to a point of contact. And so you will see exactly what's going out to anybody else in town. Hopefully that helps and answers your concern, Matt. If not, let me know and we can figure out another.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it would be wonderful to consolidate, but I understand that might not be easy.
Or, you know, I could switch you to the point of contacts list, and that gets you all the information.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Okay. I mean, at least for committee members.
Okay, I will do that.
So we just know what's happening. That's the main thing is.
Oh, absolutely. And even the end user list, you still know what's happening. In the point of contact list, you're just going to get the same information in a few different formats. Mm-hmm. But that's not a bad idea. So we will do that. Okay. Absolutely. Other questions so far? I don't want to race through too much and zip over any questions. I'm happy to take any.
I actually have one for you, Heather.
Yeah.
There was a point brought up that, and maybe you covered this and you covered a lot, so I want to just make sure that we're thinking about this. That someone said our meetings and our events show up on the town website, not just on our specific website. Is that something that you're actively?
Yes, that I'm working on. Our public meetings
Aaron?
all automatically, because they're posted, show up on the town calendar. This last forum, it was not flagged as much as a public event or public meeting, and so it ended up not on the right town calendar. It was somewhere else that's just kind of, promotional events and that kind of stuff. So I am going to make sure that going forward, these community forums are on the actual town calendar, even if that means I have to post them as an actual public meeting of the building committee. And if that's the case, then, we'll be in session during that, even if not all of us are there, but it's public posted as a public meeting. So I am going to make sure that all forums are on that main town calendar. Not necessarily all the listening session, because those are not necessarily open to anyone. If we're going to the Commission on Disabilities, we're not inviting the whole town to that committee. We're going to speak to that committee. So the larger events, the public forums, will be on the calendar.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. That actually leads me right into forums, which is what I was going to mention next. So as you've seen, the next one is coming up.
Before you leave listening, one of the things you forgot to mention, and I may not have sent it to you, right after this meeting, we're going to be meeting with the PEG Access Committee.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
That's another opportunity for us to listen and hear from another group that's interested in having some community access to the building.
Yes, thank you. I did have that one. Sorry, I missed it on my list. Let me see if there may be others. I'm looking at kind of a high level list right now. We are definitely spreading ourselves around town. So in terms of the forums, the forum on the 24th is an evening one, 7 p.m. So hopefully easy for lots of people to make. It's a Wednesday evening. This is a critical point, obviously, and it's part of a series of forums. So there's this one, and then there will be one in early April. This one is to go through the program plan. Although the actual space summary document that we all look at is a little detailed for a public forum, but it's those concepts that we'll be going through. It's the ed plan and the program that's recommended in response to it. So we'll go through all that. We'll go through actually some of the communications and public input process so far and what we've heard. And then we will continue to take, obviously, questions, and even more importantly, to some extent, feedback. So we want feedback on the program that we're recommending so that we can get a real good feel for where the community stands. The forum in April will then be a little more detail. At that point, we should have I think for that one, we should have a building plan recommendation, not a full design yet, obviously, but a concept or a building concept. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. A concept that we'll be putting out there for reaction and input. And Kristen, feel free to jump in and correct me if I've gotten any of my terms wrong here.
Doing great.
Okay, thank you. So I really am happy with the way these are lined up, and huge thanks to Kristen, because she's the one who helped. She's the one who really told me what needs to happen and when it can here. I feel like we have a good plan to share information as it's created, get feedback, take that feedback and revise if necessary, share the next round of information, get feedback and revise as necessary. So it really is a good looping process with the community. That's forums. Any further questions now before I keep going? I know that's a big topic there. Okay. Next, just an update on the website. As you all know, our website is hosted on the school district site. It's relatively limited in what we can do. It's a pretty tight structure. So we can add text, we can add some graphics, that's about it. However, we are taking a deep look at it right now to make some improvements. We want to add more graphics. Even if we don't have a building sketch yet, there are other things that we can add, even if it's even some graphics like we've used on the event flyer. We're gonna add some graphics. We're gonna add some, hopefully some easier navigation. So anyway, right now we're in the process of just looking at recommendations. So that's just kind of a heads up that there's work being done on the website, and that should be improved a little bit soon. I think that those are the main updates on communications, unless I've missed anything that those of you who've given me advice have weighed in on. I think that's the high level. So with that said, and again, questions welcome if there are any other questions or thoughts or comments. If you guys have suggestions, please, I am all ears, because I'm kind of running through this, figuring it out as I go. As I've mentioned to a couple of you, I ended up communications chair because I think it's important, not because it's something I'm real experienced in. So I'm figuring it out as I go, and I'm very open to suggestions. Thankfully, Kate Hanley has said that she would be willing to help me and has great experience. Would anybody be willing to nominate Kate to join me on the, oh, actually, does that have to happen first, or do we unseat Pat first? Process question, sorry.
I would love some help with this.
Probably doesn't matter. You know what, if somebody nominates, then I think we can probably take one vote to just change the membership.
I think Pat has resigned as chair. We just need to have a new, I mean,
okay.
Is vice chair.
And I'll nominate Kate Hanley.
I will second the nomination and support the idea that you pull all of us in on outreach, Heather. I think that makes perfect sense. We're all willing, and we've got multiple networks now.
Terrific.
Thank you, Matt and Court. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would ask guys further discussion before we take a vote. Is there anybody else who would be willing to be nominated? Or anyone else who wants to nominate someone who you think that would be good, even if you're not sure if they're willing?
No, but we can certainly do ad hoc work for you.
Okay, great. Terrific. And you know, the last piece that I should mention, because we were talking about structure last time, is I did talk about having, you know, other people join this, although we're not going to do that. There may be things at some point where we just need hands on deck, you know, envelope stuffing type work, even if we're not doing physical envelopes. And in that case, we may take some volunteers, building committee or other. There are a few people who've said they'd be happy to do things like that. So this is not new. This is something we've discussed since the beginning of the communications plan. So, but just as a heads up and a reminder, there may be some volunteers at some point who help us with very simple tasks, never strategy or discussions or anything. I mean, anything like that. So that's the end of my discussion. You can take your vote.
And consider us all volunteers for all of that. We should all be working towards spreading the word.
I will then.
Okay. So with that, I will call for a roll vote. Court Booth.
Aye.
Thank you. Matt Johnson.
Aye.
Heather Bow.
Aye.
Stephen Crane.
Aye.
Frank Cannon.
Yes.
Kate Hanley, are you up to the task?
Aye,
aye. Pat Nelson. Was that a yes, Pat?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
Charlie Parker.
Yes.
Russ. John.
Aye.
Justin.
Yes.
Lori.
yes.
Jared.
Yes.
I can see you now. Hey, Stephen Crane. You're muted, Stephen.
But I voted yes already.
Oh, you did? Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I'm just going through my on screen. All right, great. The motion passes. And thank you, Kate, for agreeing to participate and help Heather. It's a huge task. And Heather, you should know that the Alcott PTG went out this morning and I got notification of the forum. So I'm getting it from all sides. So it's
Good,
great
I'm
to
glad.
see it in there. Yep.
Love to hear
So
that.
the Alcott parents are aware, and I'll be sure to spread the word to my friends and fellow parents at Alcott. So
Wonderful. Thank you
Okay.
all for your help that you're about
What's
to provide. And thank you, Kate Hanley, for joining me. I'm so happy.
yeah, Great. So, okay, in the interest of time, we just need to get to Finance Subcommittee. So previously, and apologies for, I think we overlooked this when we went through them the last time, and I appreciate it being brought to my attention, mostly because Tim Holt was previously running the Finance Subcommittee. By the way, it occurs to me, does everyone know that Tim officially asked to formally step down as even a member? So I guess I'm just realizing that everyone may not be aware. I was so very sad to hear that and see his letter to the select board. And I guess I wanted to make everyone aware of that. And I'm just realizing maybe not everyone knew that. So we thanked him for all his hard work that he put forward while he was on the building committee. And I will miss him dearly. I needed him. He was everything I'm not. And I always say that. And Pat has stepped in and graciously filled that role. But I think everyone should be aware of that. So previously, Tim, and also Susan Bates, who had to step away for her new role with the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Matt. And Matt has stepped into her role as designee from that board. So the two of them made up a substantial amount of the group. I believe it was John Harris and Jared were the other members. So in recognizing that, I went back and researched and looked at when we formed all of this and realized that Stephen Crane, who's our town manager, as you all know, was not on the building committee officially when we made these groups. And I do believe that Stephen should be part of that group. And I guess I'm wondering if there's anyone that would be willing to step in and participate in both Tim and Susan's absence. So Jared and John are the lone soldiers right now. Kate is also on that, but recognizing Kate's new role in the communications subcommittee, I'm going to suggest that she come off and maybe someone entertain a motion to have Stephen join. It makes a lot of sense. He negotiates our contracts and is very involved in the finance piece of this. So I'm asking if anyone's willing to participate with John and Jared, and then would someone consider making a motion and having Stephen Crane participate?
I will move to nominate Stephen Crane to join the Finance Subcommittee.
Excellent. Thank you.
Second.
Gratefully.
Great. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote to have Stephen join the Finance Subcommittee. Russ?
Yes.
Thank you. John?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you, Justin. That's all right. Heather?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Court?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got everyone. Okay, excellent. That is a great structure. At some point, there will need to be a chair of that group because, again, I believe it was Tim who was chairing that. And was there anyone else while we're on this topic as far as the desire to want to participate and join Stephen, John, and Jared in the Finance Subcommittee? And if folks need to think about it and then offer, you know, volunteerism moving forward, it would be appreciated. I know that, you know, these guys are all certainly the best of the bunch as far as capabilities with finances. So I think we're in good hands. All right. I guess let's leave it at that. And thank you, Stephen, for agreeing to that. Yes, Court.
Just quickly, we have added Russ Hughes to the design subcommittee. You wanted another school department person who had his knowledge base on that subcommittee. You mentioned that you might want to do that by vote, and if so, should we do that now? I think our agenda gives us that latitude.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder, Court. I think that's a great point and should officially vote him in. The idea is that having a member with the facilities knowledge and background becomes critical. Maybe not so much as we're speaking about the educational plan. Maybe they have insight and that's awesome. But certainly as we move forward into whether it's material selection, durability, system selection, all of those things will come into play, and we'll look to Russ for his knowledge and background on that. So I know he's attended the design subcommittee recent meetings and would appreciate a formal vote for his entry officially onto that. So I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Thank you, Court. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Hearing none, let's take a vote to add Russ Hughes to the design subcommittee officially. Kate, how do you vote?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you. Court?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes.
Thank you. Frank?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Matt Root? I'm just realizing we have two Matts. Did I miss you earlier, Matt?
We both voted on the last one.
Good 2 for
I told
1.
you I'm having a day, man. My apologies to both Matts. And thank you both for voting previously. Russ.
Yes.
Make it official, right? John.
Yes.
Justin.
Yes.
Heather.
Yes.
And Lori.
Yes.
Jared.
Yes.
And Stephen.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you all. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Kristen, who's hopefully having a better day than Dawn. Oh, wait, sorry.
Dawn, sorry.
Yeah.
This is Heather. Can I add one thing that I just forgot to add in my communications update, because I want everybody to know that we're also planning a survey to the town. So we're finalizing it right now. And the point is to get input on our big decisions that we're making right now. So I just didn't want to forget to mention that, so you're not all shocked when you see a survey go out.
That's great. I look forward to the hearing the outcome from that. So
yes.
Excellent. Do you know when that's going out?
Working on finalizing it. I don't yet. And okay. We also, by the way, the other thing I forgot to mention, the end user distribution list is one that anybody can sign up for. And it was just pointed out to me that the link is not clear on our site. So I'm going to fix that and make it very clear. But we will be encouraging people to sign up for our list so that anybody can get updates. So that's another thing you can encourage all your friends to do, is sign up for the exciting building committee distribution list.
Great.
And now I'll stop talking so you can have the rest of the meeting. Sorry.
You have a lot of content today, Heather. It's great.
I just had lots to share.
Okay, excellent. And I'm realizing, is it Lori who will be speaking to the ed plan, or Kristen?
Either way, I think we just wanted to acknowledge that since our last meeting, the ed plan had a number of revisions and reviews and was approved, it's my understanding, at the school committee meeting on the 26th of January.
And I'll just add, it's posted on the webpage and available to everyone. So we can share that out as part of our public communication.
That may be worth, as we forward the public community forum information, to share that link as well. So, you know, those who are interested and want to participate have a background knowledge of what the goals and future of the education here will be.
Correct.
Just one quick question. Were there any significant updates toward the end? I mean, I saw the initial draft, but I didn't know if there were any big changes.
I would say the part that was revised most was a more substantiation to where we are with the educational use of the gym, the auditorium, the team spaces, just really calling those out more specifically. Otherwise, it, I think, is much like you saw it. That was the biggest feedback from the school committee.
Thanks.
Yeah, correct. We requested that, and that came through.
Great. So the rest of our agenda lives in the PowerPoint. So I will go over to that and my partner Ian Parks.
Thank you, Kristen. So we just want to talk to you guys today about the construction delivery method. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Peter to go over the first 2 slides just to give you a background in the different types of delivery method. And then we'll talk on the last slide. I'll go over the application of the Concord Middle School project. So I'll hand it over to Peter. Is he on mute?
Sorry, my mute button was hit about 3 times and it wouldn't go off mute. So that's what was happening right there. So thank you, Ian. So a lot of you are familiar with these different delivery methods, which is the contractual relationship you're going to have with your builder. So I'm thinking some are familiar, some are a little bit less. So I'm thinking, Pat and Don, maybe after the second slide, if anybody has any comments, if there's any questions before we get on to Ian, I can give you some current examples if anybody wants. So in the state of Massachusetts, you can decide on delivery methods in Chapter 149 of the state laws. Chapter 149 was set up as requirements for procurement by cities and towns to hire their general contractor. 149 is a system where the lowest price on bid day gets the job. So the drawings are completed. There is no input from any builder or builders. The job goes out to bid, and there's bidding laws and how the subcontractors bid it and how the general contractors bid it and add in the subcontractor prices and all that. And once the low bid comes in, unless there's some sort of irregularity, the low bidder on that day is your contractor. So it's a very traditional delivery system. It's very important on all projects, 149 or 149A for tight documents, but they're essential in 149 because they are bidding what's on the drawings and only what is on the drawings in a very competitive situation. So therefore, any variations from bid day, from the plan, if you decide to change something, can really expose you to cost and schedule risk when you're going with this delivery method. And it's a lump sum contract. So the contractor bids the job, he's $50 million. He's going to get $50 million to do the project, adding any changes to that, and he bills you on a percentage basis every month. The state has allowed you to apply if you would like to go a different method, and they've added this Chapter 149A, where you engage a general contractor. They call it construction managers, but they're the same thing. Some of the 149 guys don't go after 149A and vice versa, but you interview general contractors and they're brought on at some point after the schematic during the design development, and they're brought on in a competitive basis based upon their percentage fee and their pricing for their general conditions and for their qualifications on doing a job that you're doing. This allows you to build a relationship with the contractor. The contractor provides input during the bidding. You're paying for that input because part of their proposal is a pre-construction services dollar amount. One of the nice things about 149A is if you're fast tracking a project and you know the steel's taking a long time, or you know you have to get the site done early, it allows you, instead of waiting for the full bid, it allows you to go out into the competitive market and hire this, and buy the steel, for instance. And then the contract's open book. So when you agree on the price, they're billing you, you have a guaranteed maximum. But if it comes under, that money goes back to the town, and the bills every month are a couple inches thick because they're backing up every single cost. So, you know, how do you guide through this? We can go over some pros and cons on 149. So it's a very traditional delivery system. You design it, you bid it, and you build it. It's simpler to manage. It's a fully defined project scope right off the bat. it's perceived as being more competitive and therefore maybe less expensive. And you are awarded to the lowest responsible bidder because you can pre-qualify the contractors. The cons on this is you don't know really, even though we're doing a lot of estimating, what the price is going to be until that day. And it's a bid opening and it's a surprise. You don't have any input from the person who's going to build your building for the next two years. They're getting familiar with the project as soon as they see the documents. So you're hiring somebody for $50 million who's seen your project for 2 weeks. And it's prone to changes and cost increases. Now in 149A, you are selecting on qualifications, experience, and of the proposed team. However, you have the option of doing that in some of 149 also, although not necessarily the proposed team. You have some design phase assistance, which we talked about. You get some early cost estimates and feedback from the specific subcontractor community, which has been thought of as being maybe more accurate than estimating services. You can do some fast tracking, and it's real teaming concept. So the cons here is, well, there's a significant cost up front for this general contractor assistance. The fast track demands can sometimes lead to documents that aren't complete, not from SMMA, of course. There's a potential for higher costs because of more management personnel in their general conditions competition. And there's less monetary motivations for them to save money, because when they save money, it goes back to you guys, although the contractor you're hired would be a trusted person who would be trying to save money. And then the design can be challenged, and there's potential for change orders on all of this. So with that, if you'd like, before we go on to Ian, and I'll leave this up to Don and Pat, if we want to have some questions, you want to save them to the end, any comments?
I have one. Well, I have a statement for those who are not as close to this process. Both of these delivery methods still require filed subbids. So per state law, there are certain trades that are required to be filed subbids when they're over the contracted amount per law. And both of these have to still include those. So that's like a common denominator. One thing that could be in Chapter 149A, construction manager at risk. For example, they can, use the site contractor that they love using, and maybe they go out and get another quote or something, but they're not required to use the lowest bidder if it's not a filed subbid. So just something to consider, and experience I've had, and I've done both delivery methods. I'm currently doing both on my projects, that with a Chapter 149A, the CM can choose, if it's not a filed subbid, the preferred subcontractor that they like to use. And that's just a differentiator between them. I was going to make one other point. I know that recently a lot of projects are straightforward new construction, are deciding to go back to 149. I feel like in the industry, and Kristen and Peter and Ian can certainly speak to it. I've been in the industry long enough where it was only Chapter 149 for a long time. And then Chapter 149A started coming about and became more popular. And then it felt like everything was CMAR, like construction manager at risk. It was all of our projects are going that way. And now it feels like the tides are turning, and a lot of the construction managers are actually doing Chapter 149 work. So right now I have a project literally bidding as we speak. And I think we have 6 or 9 qualified general contractors, of which more than half are CMs and typically do 149A work. So I think just in general, in the industry, the tides are sort of turning, and some of it's market driven, and some of it's just people have realized that in some cases, Chapter 149A may not have been the right delivery method. So just food for thought, context. We do this all the time. And like I said, I'm doing it both ways. And I have 2 projects right now that are out to bid, and one of them's 149 and one of them's 149A. So. But my 149A project is a 6-year construction phased occupied building in a very tight urban site. So that factored into that decision. So just food for thought. I think Frank, the Minuteman was CMAR, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask her. Case studies, you know, if you think about our high school, Concord Carlisle, or if you think about cautionary tales like Newton North, you know, it'd be interesting to hear, you know, what the different models were and as a specific examples that we might be familiar with, if you have any.
Well, the
Lincoln. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what about Lincoln? I know SMMA worked on Lincoln. Is working on.
Lincoln's a Reno, right? Ad Reno.
Correct.
Kristen?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's
it is 149A.
149A.
Yeah. It is some parts. It's very complicated. Ad Reno.
Dawn had a really good point regarding the contractors who are going after 149A. Back in the day, it was thought of as a very, very, very tough market to be hard bidding public work. And some people stayed away from it, and some very good contractors did it. But some very good contractors stayed away from it. When 149A came in, not only was it there to help communities possibly get out of that hard bid system and bring somebody on, it was also done to get some more people interested in the public realm of construction. And what Dawn said is exactly right. As this has gone forward, the contractors who were focusing just on 149A started to drift into the 149 market. On our projects right now, just to give you some examples, we're working in the town of Brookline right now. It's a 2-part project. One is a big addition and some other work inside the existing building. The new building went 149. The second phase of the project, the renovation of the existing building, including moving students around occupied, went 149A. So they actually bifurcated their delivery system. The same thing in Braintree. Braintree East Middle School was a phased renovation project occupied. They went to 149A. Their new school, Braintree South, is not. They went 149. The rest of our projects, it's about half and half, 149, 149.
I think it's also maybe worth mentioning that some of the 149A trend was, I think, enhanced by the MSBA reimbursement. They had a reimbursement points that they would apply if you were using that method, so it would offset some of those higher upfront costs. And they've since stopped offering that additional percent reimbursement.
That's a good point, Kristen. Yeah, they stopped doing that. So for a while, it seemed like everyone was going that route to get the additional percentage point.
Right.
Can I ask a question about cost planning? From what I understand, that design bid build has fixed cost and CM at risk is variable cost. How do you calculate the cost planning into that?
Well, the documents have a cost to them. The differences in the delivery methods are you're getting someone to tell you, the market is going to tell you what those documents are worth. And in the 149A, when you're told what those documents are worth in a competitive market, should you decide to go ahead, that's what you're going to pay for the building. And there's not too much documentation that goes along with exactly what is going into the project as far as cost goes, other than you pay based upon a certified percentage complete of each trade every month, which is looked at very carefully monthly before the bill is paid. On the 149A, you're still getting a fixed contract amount from the contractor. However, they're sending their bills in every month, detailing to you all the labor and material that was done that month, their exact cost based upon their contract agreement with you. and you add that up at the end of the project. And if it's under, the additional money comes back to the town. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you.
I think it might also be worth mentioning the cost estimating looks completely different in design phase. So in terms of planning, the cost estimators will have different markups that reflect which type of delivery method you're planning. So we, in our phase last year, had run both in parallel. And you'll have noted that the CM, there was a line for if it were 149A or 149, and then there was another line after that adjusted for the markups for 149A, and it was that higher number based on the markups that go with that delivery method. So we plan, that's why it's important to decide now and early so that we can have the estimates adjusted for the correct markups.
Yeah, also, it's good to make the decision early, because if you're going to 149A, there's applications you have to do. And then going out into the marketplace and to get somebody on board during DD, it's just kind of it's an interview, long process getting them on board. So ideally, it's nice to have a direction early on.
It's also worth noting in the 149A, the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, doesn't often come in until you're well into construction. And some of that has to do with filed subbids and other factors that play into it. But I mean, I have had a year of construction without a GMP. So from our construction manager. So that's also something you might say, well, you know, we have a guaranteed maximum price. Like, that's true, but often it doesn't come along until you're pretty deep into the project. So just worth considering.
When I was just gonna ask a quick question. Based on the example projects, you know, my perception is the more complicated a project is, like a renovation or a phased build out or a, you know, working around an occupied space, you know, on an addition or something like that, the more complicated it is, the more likely CM at risk is the way to go. And the more straightforward, you know, ground up new construction, it seems like 149, just design, bid, build, is the more straightforward path. Do I perceive that correctly?
Yeah, so just a suggestion here. Maybe we move on to the next slide that addresses these very questions. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good idea. Don and Pat, if you want to keep moving on, that's great.
Yep.
Can I just ask a question at the end? Tell me if this is going to come up in your next part. But for someone who's not particularly familiar with this, how do you factor in the vetting of the contractors? You know, knowing that you've got the best contractor, even though you're going to go with the lowest bid, there must be some way to segue out contractors you don't necessarily want. And how do you do that in the 149?
You still pre-qualify, Pat. There'll be a small group that volunteers, and you still pre-qualify the 149 contractors.
Okay, so there's okay.
Yep,
thanks.
I just went through it on my other project. Yep.
Thank you.
I will say that it is, there has to be good reason to not qualify someone, but it does happen.
Yep.
Quick question, do we specify the qualifiers?
What does that?
Well, for example, you know, what are we looking for in the way of a contractor that is special to our project that we're primarily interested in seeing excellence? And so, yeah, the answer is yes. Okay, good. So we can be somewhat excluding in some ways based on our own interests.
The town writes the RFQ.
Excellent.
All right, so I'll jump in here and talk about application here for the Concord Middle School project. So we want to talk about known factors and influences, what we know today. And I'm going to preface all of this with, you don't necessarily have to make a decision today. There is time. Like we said before, it's better to make it earlier on in the process. So we'll leave that up to you guys as far as timing decisions you made. And also, you don't have to agree with the opinion at the bottom of the page here. So this is a committee decision, and so we'll walk through the thought process here. So some known factors. We know that we have sufficient time available for the design and the bid process for this project. We'll look at schedule next, but essentially you have all in, a 2-year design process in which you're refining the documents, making sure that they're complete, making sure that they're constructible, and you'll have periodic reviews by professionals that are able to vet those things out throughout the design process. So it's something that the design risk can be managed through quality contract drawings and specs. And either way you go, that's always the end goal, is that you want quality contract drawings and specs. If you go with 149 or 149A, definitely want the quality to be in the drawings and specs there. So sustainability features can be designed without a CM builder input. And so, that just says you don't have to have a construction manager involved to provide input on the sustainability features of the building. There are essentially ways to go through that process without having them engaged, and you're putting your faith and reliance in the design team and the professionals to vet out those sustainability features without a construction manager, and that's perfectly fine. So this is not an addition or renovation project in which you have to think about the impact to the current school activities. So it's not a complex project where you have to really think about student safety and faculty safety on a school campus. We don't have that going on here. We have a new building located on a large open site, which is going to allow for a safe barrier between school operations and construction operations. There's no factors driving project phasing here, so there's no reason to split the project up into chunks. Whereas there are other projects that we've managed that it really makes sense to split them up in phases, and that's geared more towards CM at risk. It's not a complex urban site, so you don't have a lot of the logistical challenges that you would have in a complex urban site. We're not dealing with a train line running right next to the tracks. You're not coordinating with the rail agencies. You have plenty of space for lay down, so you're not trying to figure out how to build through lean construction practices and bringing materials in and putting them directly into the building as soon as they get there. So you have the space and the logistics there to build on a less complex site. One risk that we do need to be aware of is just the market costs. And so the projection here is that we would be bidding sometime in Q1 or Q2 of 2023. So there's ways to project through escalation of what that market risk is, and we would be carrying 8 or 9% escalation to account for that. But it is a risk. So I think given all of these factors and what we know today, our opinion and SMMA's opinion is that the project lends itself to design bid build, Chapter 149, but it's certainly open for discussion, and again, it's a committee decision. So.
And I'm wondering if you could speak to, I hear that you're recommending the design bid build. If you were not recommending design bid build, would there be other compelling factors that we should think about with the construction manager at risk? Why would somebody not say go with design bid build?
For this particular project.
For this particular project. Yeah. Thank you, Matthew.
Sure. I mean, I guess as far as reasons for you want to understand reasons to potentially go with a CM at risk. Then.
Yeah, I just want to know what the other side of the coin is.
Well, the argument for, because I was a contractor and we sold the 149A model. And the positives to hiring somebody in the 149A is that number one, when you interview the contractors, you get a really good feel for the team you're going to get. So you really are able to pick people and not just companies. Number two, you're gaining a trusted relationship with somebody who's going to be spending all your money. And if you look at a curve of a project, the costs start out, you got feasibility design and legal and all this stuff. When the construction starts, boom, the chart goes up, and you're giving all that trust to someone who you know a little bit because you pre-qualified them, but you're kind of beholden to the low bidder at that point. So the other issue is that there have been studies done that have shown that the 149A is a less expensive way to do the project. And I would tend to agree with those studies, everything being equal. I believe that there is a little bit of a risk factor that you're paying for with that differential due to the contractor you're going to get that you don't necessarily know. Those are some of the arguments to going to 149A, in that the fee that you're paying for pre-construction is going to come back to you with the contractor's knowledge during the design and planning that's going to effectively save you that money by getting the documents out to and the phasing and everything else out in a very tight basis, so that effectively, you're paying some money up front for some advice, but you're saving it later. But all these bullets that Ian went over, those are what a GC will bring to you if you go 149A. However, I think that in this particular case, those bullet points are being brought to you. You don't need them, and they're being brought to you by the architect and the OPM.
So that mitigates some of what you just said about 149 versus about 149A, because we've got the solid input from the architects and the OPM. So some of those benefits that you just discussed with the CMM, the construction manager at risk, is sort of mitigated by that. Therefore, giving us an opportunity to take a possibly lower cost approach.
I think that's the argument, and that, hey, to the extent that there's that the bidders need to know what their access to the site's going to be and what their laydown area is going to be and how the traffic's going to go, that's something Hill's going to do. So that stuff all goes into the bidding documents.
Thank you.
I have two questions, if I can. The first is, when we talk about cost risk with DBB, I know you just referred to this, but I want to understand how much of a risk that is. I know on the first slide that one of the cons is if you make changes along the way, all of a sudden you're not your price could change. So I want to understand how much of a risk that is. And then the second question is, why did the MSBA stop doing incentives to use DBB? Was there a particular reason?
So I won't answer the second question, and I can maybe give that to Kristen. But the first question is, I honestly don't think there's a huge difference in the risk. A general contractor you're being brought on as a CM, yes, is going to have some input into what's going on the drawings. But if there's something not on that, the CM is going to ask for a change order. You're still going to have the risk of something that maybe you didn't put on the plan that you're going to do later. Whether it's a design build contract or a CM contractor, there's going to be a change order request. So to the extent there's a little more risk with 149A, but if it ain't there, the CM's going to be there's still a risk there for the CM with change orders.
Okay, thanks.
And for part two of the question, I don't, and maybe Don, if you saw something, I don't
Sorry,
know, but no, it's fine. We never saw any list or explanation of why the MSBA stopped, but it's my understanding, just from having the dialogue with them about the percentages having gone away, is that it was related to the upfront cost being higher. The MSBA is trying to spread their grant funding across more projects. So I do believe that they wanted to make sure that funding was going to buildings and towns and not a process. And then, Peter mentioned that there are some studies that say that you may break even or do better with a CM in terms of pricing and risk, but competitive bidding does tend to have a lower bid cost upfront. And so they're just looking to be responsible with their grant funding.
Okay, so it wasn't a move away from that system working. It wasn't that they no longer wanted to promote DBB. It was just about how they were using their funds.
Correct.
Actually, just for clarification, they were promoting Chapter 149A, which is construction manager at risk.
Oh, okay.
Right. Oh, sorry.
I thought I heard you, and I was going to correct it, and then I realized when you just asked that. Yep. So it's actually 149A that they were giving additional reimbursement.
Okay. And now they're not.
And now they're not. They basically just leveled the field and said, you pick your own. And, I think what is happening, at least right now, and it's even more so post, or during COVID, I don't want to say post, I wish we were through it, is that the market is awfully competitive right now. And we're all seeing that on our projects. And there are contractors and former or both construction managers now bidding as general contractors, that the competition is steep, and which benefits all of us that have projects underway. And so the MSBA has just said, pick your own, everything suits, there's something for every project out there, and we're not going to incentivize one over the other. So I think 149A, when they made that decision, was fairly new. Like I'm thinking back to my 2012 project. So what are we, almost 9 years ago, when that was one of my first CMAR projects, Essex Technical High School up in Danvers. And it was new to me. It was maybe our firm's second go at a CMAR project. In the meantime, I've had a bunch, and now it just feels like, and I described this earlier, that the tides are turning, kind of going back to design bid build 149. And it's just the market changes.
I have a couple of questions. First,
Please.
Is there a possibility you could get into the building faster with a CMAR because you're working in parallel with the builder? And is that a consideration for us? Secondly, is there some way with DBB to avoid the proverbial contractor from hell that, starts with a lowball bid, but has as a core business model, change order process to make up for it? Because you just end up, you don't have discretion. And I don't know, again, I specific examples are helpful, but I just want to make sure that we don't lose control, I guess.
I'll ask our design professionals to speak, but I can speak on my experience as far as CMAR and getting into the building quicker, potentially. you can do early bid packages, and those include site work, you know, as far as like excavation, foundations, footings, steel. So those in theory can come out before the building's officially finally drawn, in that you could also do it in a phase project, which is how one of mine is happening now. Like we put out a piece of the building before the rest of it so that they could get going on that. And that's one way to potentially get in quicker. It's more work on the design end, but that's okay. Everyone's, you know, been down there. Sorry, one second. My kids are leaving for school. Let me just say goodbye. Off to Alcott they go. So potentially, yes. And that is a factor. Could it affect the schedule? Potentially. And I think, you know, our design professionals could speak to the actual impact, because I'm not designing this building. Your other question about the proverbial, you know, contractor who wants to just, you know, nickel and dime and find holes. You're sometimes going to find that even in CMAR, for what it's worth, the filed sub bids. Electrical engineers or electrical contractors come to mind. They often show up day one with their list of holes that they found in the drawings, and that's inevitable because it's a filed sub bid, and you're going to have, again, that's kind of a common denominator between them. As far as a general contractor, pre-qualifying does help. And again, some of these construction managers are now switching over and doing general contract work. And so, you know, the
we
hope
could
is that
have a low bid from among these pre-qualified contractors, so we would have more control. Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
If that's helpful, yeah.
We don't really aren't as concerned about the upfront costs as the total project costs.
Yes.
Matt, I'll bet you a beer that we have, either way, we have contractors that play that game.
I won't take that back.
Yeah, and we're fighting because you're going to have that. And even with you don't really get to be all that selective, because a lot of, especially electrical subs, they're all very good, and many of them have their own in-house counsel, which gives you an insight into how they operate. And so it is tough to not pre-qualify or not choose a responsible low bidder, even if you know that they're difficult to deal with or that they're a change order factory. And that's why we have our design professionals and project managers who fight those battles for us. But it's just a part of the system and part of the process either way. But I think the way I view 149 and 149A, it is a big decision, but from my view, it's not a complicated decision because of the factors that are laid out. And the thing that I would be looking for is if Hill and SMMA agree on a recommendation, that would be compelling to me.
Yeah, we've certainly talked to SMMA, and we do have an agreement on the opinion here.
I'll just quickly add. I mean, from my position in the industry, most of my projects are CM at risk. I mean, this is in the private institutional work. So obviously, we're in a different position here with the public project. I think there is value in the CM at risk, but I think given the potential savings that it sounds like from 149, that it seems like we go in that direction, at least from my opinion. I'm wondering, Ian, can you talk a little bit more? I guess I feel like I've heard Hill talk about how the design bid build is coming in at lower costs right now, and that seems to be the biggest kind of vote for why we would go for 149. Can you just shed a little more light on the numbers and the expectations of project savings?
Sure. You mean as far as a cost per square foot analysis? You know, I think what we would lean towards is you know, what we're planning for is the 555 a square foot for all-in costs here, as far as what we're seeing and what's trending in the market right now. So you know, and that's that's with the escalation of 4% per year. So that's, we're projecting 2023 again, Q1 or Q2 escalation. So that would be 8 or 9%.
Yeah, and Ian, and I think that those numbers are, we're not anticipating right now, Matt, that in our estimating, I mean, we might have had to put a factor in for 149A, but I think right now the estimating is going to proceed as if it's 149. I spent a lot of my career arguing that it wasn't more expensive to go to 149A. And I've been in the OPM business now six years, and I've been dealing with professionals at Hill who have been doing this work for 10 or 15 years, helped put together the laws. And I have been convinced by my peers that there is a savings on all of the analysis that's been done by the industry and by the MSBA, that there is a savings to go to 149. What the percentage is, I don't want to throw numbers out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I think the value proposition of the 149A is that you pay a little bit more, but you also have an insurance against risk, that you're able to better manage the risk. And so there's value there. And it just depends on, are we going to hit any of those issues that would result in larger costs or not? And I appreciate that the answer to that is good documentation. And I know that SMMA and the design team will develop good documentation for us. As Stephen and Matt's not bet shows, we could still run into problems there. But I certainly take the recommendation from both SMMA and Hill that the recommendation for 149, and there is cost savings, and we're already dealing with a budget that feels high, and so it does seem like design bid build is the direction to go in, at least from my perspective.
So I just want to pop in. Oh, Don, were you?
Sorry, Kristen. I was just going to encourage everyone, those who have time and want to look into this, the MSBA publishes their board meetings, which include recent bids, both DBB and GMPs, which are our CMAR guaranteed maximum prices. And it's just interesting, there's on their charts, there's a variance from construction estimate. And I just encourage everyone to go onto their web. Everything's public with the MSBA, which is a beautiful thing. But a trend I've noticed in the variance from the construction estimate to the actual bid, which is what we're talking about, right? Recently, the CMR or CMAR is in and around, and with some variances, some overages and a few under. But consistently, DBB has been multiple millions under recently, or in some cases. So it's just worth doing a little bit of homework if anyone's curious, or if anyone wants to know. That's one place that I often check in. They do quarterly board meetings and they share this information. And that's just because I only know my projects and my firms. It's worth seeing what else is out there. And that's sort of all market driven. So I just want to share that so folks with time and interest can look into that.
So with time in mind, I know that we're 5 minutes out from wrapping up here. And so we are not going to get to the rest of our slides. And, this is a very important topic. So time worth spent. I would like to ask if there is a way that we could have an additional meeting added to cover the other topics.
Sorry, Kristen, could you put the agenda back up so everyone can see it for a second? I know the schedule was on there, updates from subcommittees. I just want everyone to have a sense of what we didn't have time to get to. I worried when I saw the draft of the agenda that it would be a lot to talk about. So
here we are.
Yep. So schedule, cash flow, and then designer update, which includes a lot of the work they've been doing. And then any correspondence and public comments, which we need to get to today for those that are tuning in, we need to allow them to make comments and ask questions. So, Kristen, do you have a suggested date in mind?
No, I had hoped that we would get through it.
Not good for those that have children in the system and are on, proverbial vacation.
I would recommend that we cover the remaining topics before the community forum on the 24th. So that would mean, that's on a Wednesday after the school recess. So that would mean a Monday or a Tuesday meeting, which I know is not common. But that would be my recommendation if it can be made possible.
May I wonder if there's any ability to stay on now? I think we're going to have a hard time scheduling this, is my worry. I've learned to book 2 hours. That's why I'm able to suggest that.
I think that's a great idea if we can do it. So I wonder if we could take a quick poll.
I think we just need to inform the public, the public access committee that we're not going to make it. I'm a liaison there. I can do that. I know that there was going to be a presentation. So
what's at 9:30?
I think it's 9:30, Matt.
It's 9:30, Matt.
On my calendar.
Yeah, and I'll let Carla know that we might be a little late, but yeah, that's at 9:30.
That's a great point, though. That is backed up a little bit to this meeting. So are folks able to stay on quickly? Is there anyone who can't? Let's start there. Oh my God.
I cannot. I have to run,
okay.
But a meeting scheduled not by me. But
okay.
But you could definitely continue on without me.
Okay, we appreciate
and I
that.
have one quick question still on 149, if I can still ask it.
Okay, so hold on one second. So can we all agree that we'll stay on till 9:30? Is that the target? We'll try to get through the balance. Okay. Are there?
There's an assumption in there that means we're going to get through the agenda. I'm not sure that that's a good assumption. Just putting it out there.
Should we decide what agenda item we want to take up next?
Yeah.
And go out of order?
Yeah, recognizing Charlie, I know you have a question, so we will come back to your question. I won't lose sight of that. What do you
want me to ask my question now?
Can I propose that, and this is just for me, but the design subcommittee seems to have so much work going on. If we could make sure we cover what your report is, your updates are, I would propose going out of order in that way. At least get there first. Charlie can ask his question, but that would be my suggestion.
Okay, and from a schedule discussion, can that hold until the next meeting, or do we need to get to that today?
We can, I don't know how long Sims would take. Committee members, that'll take us 2 minutes. Because
it would be good. That's a couple minutes on the schedule too.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, our presentation's a couple minutes.
Yeah, as far as schedule, I think critical decisions that we were looking at was timing of releasing the schematic design and design development. So it's something that we could certainly talk about at the next meeting.
Okay, so here's what I will propose. We finished the 149, 149A discussion. We moved the design subcommittee up. The cash flow should be a quick update. And then I guess what's left, schedule will push to the next meeting if that's okay with everyone.
The schedule and the cash flow update is going to be on our monthly report, which is coming out. So you'll have that, you'll be able to see that.
Okay. All right, and if we can get to the other updates from the educational team and community as well as sustainability, awesome. But we do need to get to comments. So I wanna leave at least 5 minutes at the end and hopefully folks can stay on. Okay. Charlie, what's your...
My question is with respect to 149 and whether it has any negative impacts on our ability to deal with some of the nuances. And I call out specifically the need to have an extremely tight building that is tested extensively for for air leakage, which requires, pressure testing in cycle. And that requires some experience, I think, with that sort of thing. We can deal with it to some extent, I suppose, through the RFP. But, you can't have sloppy people, sloppy construction. And I'm not sure, whether this, becomes a problem with the 149 when we're trying to do kind of a special envelope.
I think go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say either delivery method, you would have a building envelope commissioning agent to assist with that process. You're talking about testing of the facade and air and water testing. You're going to have that professional involved in both scenarios. They're obviously not the ones building the building, so the builder is the responsible party for making sure that they build it in a way that it doesn't leak, and that's going to be, building it per the details and the specs. But you will have a building envelope commissioning agent there to walk you through that process of testing.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I am going to go through some of these more quickly than others, but I just wanted to bring again to everyone what has been presented and discussed and highlight some key points. The design subcommittee meetings, we started by doing a refresher on what is applicable on the general site information and constraints and zoning and permits. Key items is that we are, taking under strong consideration that the Sanborn School will remain in operation while the new school is being built, and that a new septic system is required. I think in terms of zoning, we've done a lot of research to understand what our setbacks, parking, lot coverage constraints are, and we had a meeting with town staff earlier this week and got some confirmation and feedback on our assumptions. I think the parking zoning is key to our project because we know we have a very limited site up on the upper area and with the fields in the building. And then lot coverage in terms of impervious lot coverage needing to remain under 15%. I think it's very key for everyone to be aware that the preliminary feedback from town staff is that we would need to remain under that 15% because there is not an existing non-conformance. In the high school, it was over and continued to be over because that was an existing non-conformance, but town staff's feedback for this site is that we should do everything we can to remain under 15%, which is a big consideration.
Kristen, can I just ask a question about that? At what point will we, because this would feature into if we were to make a bigger gym or a bigger auditorium, at what point will we know whether or not the lot coverage restricts us from even considering that?
I can say that the first phase of treetop teams was over that 15% in our early sketches, and it did not it included the 6,000 square foot gym and no auditorium. That said, we'll see in the remaining slides that we've reduced square footage. So we believe that with what we're currently recommending, we're right on the cusp. So we'll continue to track that. And I've mentioned in other meetings that there's what the ripple effect can be is that we can always work hard to keep it to that 15%, but that may mean that more things go up a floor. Some things are required to be on the first floor, like your gym, cafeteria, auditorium tend to be first floor pieces, but media centers can be up or down and things like that.
Thank you.
I wonder if I could just pipe up for a moment, Kristen. I'm glad you all are mentioning treetops because I'm hoping that's going to be an appropriate conversation for design subcommittee again. We certainly looked at it closely a year ago, but I think the working assumption was that the treetop, as compared to the other designs, wouldn't necessarily have overall cost implications or sustainability implications. And with your help, we're going to want to look at that again carefully.
Yeah. And then once we have the program settled, then we'll be going into that, those concept floor plans and work with the design subcommittee on that.
Thank you.
And then another key piece to mention is just that public water supply well that's in the area results in that zone 2 overlay, and that is something that does have project implications and considerations for making sure that our septic is being designed appropriately, and it also actually has an impact on the impervious versus pervious lot approach or pavement approach, because they actually in this kind of a district, you would not want pervious pavement where vehicles travel because of the what can then make its way into the soil, which is in this water supply well area. So that's one of the factors that brings with it. Some have asked about the wetlands, and at this time, we're not in the buffer zone for the wetlands that were marked in the first phase. So then just as quickly as possible, a summary on the where we stand with information in the design subcommittee meetings. We have our approved ed plan that we've been using as our kind of cornerstone to developing the space recommendations. The enrollment, I think we have, everyone is bought into and understands the 700 student total enrollment. And then the class size of 19 to 20 students per class. So of course, the design subcommittee may still be asking, and may still ask further questions on this, but this is what we've been presenting to date after analysis and through our recommendation. On team subjects, we've talked about being these four core subjects: English, social studies, math, and science. And then the block schedule is how the middle school is operating today and plans to continue.
Kristen, for clarity here, go back one if you would. The givens are not formal yet on the part of the design subcommittee. So, technically there are no givens, but that's something we want to start with next week. We want to sort of start to clear the deck, so to speak, with, as you say, what are givens that we can put to bed and move on. We're going to chip away at those as efficiently as we can.
Right. And I would encourage anyone who wants more information about any of these slides. These are very condensed, and we did perform a lot of analysis on class size and team size, and there's a lot more information to be had from those meetings. So we do look forward to continue validating that with the design subcommittee. So then in terms of space summary and utilization, we started with the review of the master schedule that was most current at the time, and then also factored in what the middle school anticipates in terms of changes or adjustments to that, which were not many, but just needing to look forward and not just at what's currently in place. We performed an initial analysis of how many sections there are for each class and scheduled by subject to determine, the baseline number of spaces. And then we started to look at the utilization of those spaces based on, again, the master schedule and number of course offerings. And lastly, we then worked toward optimizing that utilization with some recommendations on what spaces could be shared and how. And again, much more detail in the design subcommittee meeting slides. The summary of that utilization and space sharing is here. And this shows where our low and high utilization is of any given of the spaces based on our recommendation, and then what the spaces plan on sharing with. So in the instance of a core classroom, 6 and 8 would share with, they would continue RTE, RTI in their block schedule. Teacher planning is in one block, digital literacy is in one block, and health in another block. So that's to say that if any of these subjects all line up on the same day, your room would be in 100% use for that day. If, since health and digital literacy are not offered every day in RTI, it may be as few as low as 86% utilization in that space, which we find to be is an industry kind of target for spaces is 85%. So let's see, art classrooms, high utilization, and we can talk about any of these that anyone wants to go back to, but I'm going to move along in the interest of time. One item that is not reflected here is, so the gym, during our analysis, we established that the one full-size gym at 7,000 net square feet is sufficient for the athletic programs. However, you'll find that our space recommendation does include an alternate PE space, and that isn't scheduled per se, but may be used by health, by PE, and by others, because there are students who may not be wanting to be engaged in ball sports, for example, and we know that from the Ed Plan, there's a strong focus in Concord on lifetime health and wellness. And so there is a lot of, we felt that there's a very strong argument for the alternate PE space, though it is not scheduled.
I have a quick question, which is, when you get higher levels of utilization, of course, then you encounter more constraints. And I guess one of the things that I'd seen in the past with, I think, especially the high school, was just a very wide range of lunch times for students, because, as a consequence, is that, I don't know what the assumptions are here, but I'm just curious whether we're encountering a bunch of constraints relative to high utilizations of some of these space types.
Justin and Lori might elaborate, but it's an excellent point, because we did our first pass using space alone in the schedule, master schedule and course offerings. We did then hand this off to Justin and his assistant principals to run a simulation of a schedule to make sure that we weren't hamstringing anything or providing too much constraint. So Justin, where we arrived, I think that your schedule assumed the 3 lunches, 1 per grade, as you occur.
Yep, 1 per grade in a cafeteria. We actually are running that in 8th grade as we speak, and we had that in 8th grade last year. So we have an all 8th grade lunch, just to get a sense of the size and how we get through, especially those who purchase lunch or in free and reduced lunch, how they get through the line in a 30-minute lunch block. And again, this was pre-COVID that we were doing this with 8th grade, and it was working just fine.
Thanks.
So this recommendation, fortunately, stood the scheduling test and didn't require revisiting. So in summary, where we landed with the educational plan and that pushing some courses into other spaces was a 142,995 gross square foot building, and felt that really fulfilled the Ed Plan and optimized space utilization as shown in that summary table. I don't want, for those of us who are still thinking back on last year's space summary, we were at about 144. So an overall 1,000 gross square foot reduction, but I think it's important to not have that understated, because even though it was only a 1,000 gross square foot reduction, we were able to, through efficiencies, increase the gym size from its previous assumption that was felt very tight at the 6,000 net square feet by 1,000, which improves the perimeter runoff zone. We were able to accommodate a 1 grade auditorium, which was not in the prior recommendation. World language has been maintained in dedicated classrooms, but fewer. So again, higher utilization, but allowing those courses to continue in their own rooms. because of the other courses that we pushed into core classrooms, such as digital literacy and health, and then also maintaining that team teaching approach. So although it was what some may think a modest reduction, we were able to pack a lot of benefit in response to the ed plan. So then, of course, we needed to do a preliminary cost check on that. We were building this from the ground up and really just working toward what we felt would represent the educational plan. And you can see here that with our program recommendation, carrying over the demo and abatement cost from the March 2020 estimate, because that would remain unchanged. And then updating escalation based on some project references to the 8% current assumption. And also reducing site cost from the prior estimate due to, I think we've mentioned that we're no longer going to do work on the lower fields. They are not impacted by the project and by any of the construction or any of the revisiting. So we've removed the scope from the lower fields and some site development elements. And so we're planning on a target of 7.5 million or lower, and our construction cost total of 555. With that program, we arrive at just under the $80 million construction cost limit.
And how does the escalation play into that? Because I mean, is this $555 square foot, that's our 2023 estimate of what construction costs will be, you know, post escalation?
Yep, that includes.
Because I thought I heard that current bids were coming in around there.
The 555 does include the 8% escalation, and what we did, you'll see here, is we're just going to be very diligent and aggressive about how we choose materials and systems for the building to get there.
So like median bids today would be like 510 square feet, dollars a square foot for a comparable building, given that we're not going to bid until 2023?
That's what this is showing, yep.
Yep.
And that's reasonable assumption.
I have a comment on the 555 that's related to what Matt is saying. I think it would be helpful to explain the sourcing of the 555, either through a footnote or something. You know, how you came up with it. You know, what's the sort of the provenance of the number, rather than just sticking the number on the slide, because it's a big time number that drives the whole operation, and just, you know, having no sourcing makes it kind of tough.
Yeah, we can definitely follow up with more on that. I've attempted to do that with this breakout because the 555 is comprised of the markups assuming a Chapter 149 bid, this escalation, and then some of these fixed costs for site and demo and that building cost. But we can do that in more detail in another meeting.
Matt, back to your point, and I've shared this, I shared it last spring, and I've shared my estimates along the way. My current projects are around, or at least the new construction, I'll have hard bids 2 weeks from tomorrow. But the 90% cost estimate had it at $499 a square foot, so just around 500. And that's literally being bid as we speak. So for context, and I know that Kristen's got a spreadsheet that she looked at a few different projects out there right now, and the cost of the construction per square foot.
I think we want to make sure that we communicate that we're not, you know, picking you know, the ones that we want to get this 555. I think that's important to have credibility on this number.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, you know, Hill and I have been working together to make sure that we're checking this, and we can continue to, we're always going to be watching this, and we'll definitely walk you all through our backup.
So, Charlie, I just wonder is there a number of projects or some kind of a parameter that you want to be sure that Hill and SMMA are looking at that gives the design committee confidence because I know that this is, we're projecting, but I wonder if there's if you have a metric that would help guide their work that would give you confidence.
So Kristen, you have a you had a list of projects, and
yep.
we have a list of projects, and why don't we revisit that? And they're very good metrics that back up this number. So I agree. We should show you where our experiences are, what the time frame was, and how we project that to 2023.
And without belaboring this, I think the same question applies to the 348. It's another big number. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of the value engineering side of the equation, I suppose. So we ought to have the workup on that as well. I just think these are important points that people are going to pick at if we don't, have it defined.
I just want to be careful. I agree, but I want to be careful with we may have to indicate, like, do they have an auditorium? So the cost I just gave on my current project, we don't have an auditorium. It's a pre-K to 2. There's no auditorium. They have a cafetorium. So there are sort of qualifiers that should be included. My building is also not net zero ready. It is not passive house. It does have a solid envelope, and we're targeting an EUI under 30, but that's design EUI. So there are things that we should just take note of that are apples to apples comparisons. So when that happens, Kristen, let's just be sure to, does it have an auditorium? What level of sustainability is it? What, like I'm B4, lead B4 on my project. So, and it will be certified. So there are things that I just want to make sure that we're qualifying, because if we just look at the number, sometimes it's deceiving. So. And
that is exactly what makes this so difficult.
It's hard.
There is no building like yours.
That's right. With the same site and the same program. Yep. And totally.
So I know that we want to reserve minutes, some time for correspondence. So that's really the design subcommittee summary. And I just wanted some of the concerns and questions we've heard in a number of our outreach meetings and our listening sessions is, are we designing to the upper construction cost limit? And I wanted to definitely state we are not. We developed this program from ground up from the ed plan, and then using that utilization and best practices for 21st century schools and teaching and learning. So the fact that it has arrived at that number is, it was not backed into that number. And I just wanted to really be clear about that. For this phase, it was our charge to start from ground up, and that is what we did.
Yeah, but we are at exactly at 100 million with the 142 or 143,000.
Yep. Yeah.
I guess this will come up in the design committee meeting, design subcommittee meeting. But would it be prudent to target a little bit under the 100 million, or is that just not something that's done?
Yeah, we can. I want to make sure that we can move along to more discussion, but I agree. We can definitely continue that conversation.
And for context, just so everyone knows, I pulled up a different project that I'm not working on that my firm is, and their estimate 6 months ago for feasibility was at $600 a square foot. So just for context, I'm not working on that. That one's in Cambridge, which obviously has different site constraints and sustainability goals, but just so you know, it's there's a lot of factors that play into cost. So we should just, be careful what we're and to Charlie's point, what we're deciding to compare to.
So okay. Dawn, did you want to ask for?
I think that's the design subcommittee update, and I want to get to public comment because if folks are on and have questions, and we want to be respectful of that, I think, is it fair to say that we'll have to push the other updates to the next meeting?
You want a quick correspondence update just since the last
Yes, please. That is part of, please, Heather.
Okay, I'll do that quickly. Since our last meeting, we've had 4 emails to the whole committee. You all see them all, so I'm not going to go into detail, but just to report out, there was one regarding technology use in the ed plan and curriculum. There was one regarding a suggestion for a TV studio in the new building. There was one regarding EMF and wiring. And there was one specifically to the sustainability subcommittee regarding the use of geothermal. Those all get responded to by the chairs. So everything's been responded to and everything's being tracked.
Thank you, Heather. With that, are there any public comments, questions? If so, please turn your camera on and raise a hand, give an indicator. I see a few folks on, so I appreciate you guys sticking it out with us today on a longer meeting. Hi, Linda, I see your hand and I see you. How are you?
Good. I'll apologize in advance. My son is doing his Zoom class next door, like right next to me. It's so much fun.
Oh, of course. Please say your name and your where you live, please.
Yes, Linda Neiman, 59 Mallard. I want to thank everyone for their hard work on the middle school building, design process. I know it's been a pretty long and arduous process for everyone. I wanted to ask a question about the sustainability costs. Like previously it had come up that it was like less than 1% of the total. And I feel like that point is not often talked about. I mean, I think that's just like fantastic. And sometimes when I'm talking to people, I hear them talk about like it's sustainability versus the gym or sustainability versus education. And I don't think that, I just don't think that this information is being conveyed, that it really is not like that. And it's a really, on the grand total, it's a small portion of it. So that was my one kind of more statement. My question is regarding this solar ready, like net zero. I'm wondering in the design process, if first of all, you've contacted CMLP to discuss where, if the infrastructure that's needed is in the design, have you thought about, is it going to be on the rooftops or is it going to be over the parking structure? Because it seems like that plays pretty heavily in the design. And then on top of that, regarding the ground heat source pumps or the geothermal versus the air source heat pumps, the placement of those systems also could conflict with where the solar panels are placed. And I just was wondering if you thought about that. And I also would put in a little, I don't know, like shout out for geothermal. It seems like it would, in the long run, it actually makes it easier on CMLP. It's a less of a load on their end. And I'll stop talking now.
Thank you, Linda. Kristen, do you want to respond?
Sure. So the our charge for this phase of the feasibility was really to meet the basic core requirements of the educational plan and sustainability. So that 555 a square foot and that program number, that 142,959 is the core educational piece, and what we feel like anything below that would impact the educational delivery based on what we know from the ed plan. And then for sustainability, we haven't really called a lot of attention to it, but we did carry that sticky note in the slides that does say we are assuming a baseline of net zero ready, and we are moving forward with that target EUI of 25. And we're working with the sustainability subcommittee on what all that packs into it. But we are treating those goals as a given from the sustainability subcommittee. And to your question about the systems, that we perform life cycle cost analysis of various mechanical systems in the schematic design phase. I will say that geothermal and ground source heat pumps is a higher upfront cost. And so that does get a lot of attention, a lot of discussion when schematic design rolls around. But we see a lot of very successful buildings with the air source heat pump approach as well. And areas, we do always balance the rooftop area for VRF or ground source or panel and also parking. So all of it's always being tracked, yes.
Kristen, can you just respond to sort of what the timing is when we would be having discussions with the Concord Municipal Light Plant Does that happen up front or later? Can you speak to that?
Can I comment quickly on the light plant? I'm not sure everybody's aware of this, but Matt and I have had, in conjunction with some agreements that we made with Tim, have gone off and created a framework with the light plant to pursue solar and solar readiness at the site. So that's a highly detailed framework discussion of, all of the requirements, including all of the solar ready elements that need to go into the site itself. So that's something that we need to bring forward to the committee, at the appropriate time.
I guess that's my question to Kristen. When's that appropriate time? When do we get into that?
When is the appropriate time?
No, I was asking Kristen. I was wondering from Kristen's point of view.
At this stage, the most important thing is to understand if it's supposed to be solar ready, which we consider that a given. That's a given by code. And then in terms of right now, what was important to ascertain is whether the project costs should include that or not. And so we had that early touch point with CMLP to understand if it was a town and project goal to include the solar panels themselves in the project cost, and it is not. So I think that was the key piece, is understanding that CMLP, and I'm sure Charlie and folks are working on that, will do their own procurement and their own work around that. So that will come in schematic design, is continuing to understand what the plan is for solar.
That's well said. That's correct.
Okay. That's all. That's why I was just figuring out the timing of that. Okay, thank you.
Any other public comments? Thank you, Linda, for that.
On Linda's other question about the 1%, I'm assuming that has not been defined as yet. So we have some estimates, but we don't have a final definition on that number. I think is that correct? Kristen, should we assume that?
Yes, the industry is always trying to understand the premium, as they call it, for net zero or for sustainability elements, and no one has been able to really put that to 8%. We've seen ranges from some would say it costs 0, and some say it costs up to 5%. So it really depends on what measures you implement and how.
And to that point, some of it's just good design and making smart design decisions, whether you're trying for net zero or not. So
right, and that's the zero.
It's hard to quantify that. Yeah.
Right.
So I have to go.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
everybody.
You, okay. Any other public comments? I want to give everyone an opportunity. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, great. Kate?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Court?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Matt Johnson?
Yes.
I'll be sure to get Russ.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Justin? As he talks into a
yes
walkie. Yes. Sorry to interrupt you. You're doing important work. Heather?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, wait, Frank. Frank, I see you up there. You popped up at the top. How are you? Okay, excellent. So, Kristen, remind us our next meeting. Thank you. Just for those that are still on. What is it?
March 4th.
March 4th. Okay.
I suggest Dawn and Pat take a look at the schedule and the remaining agenda items and update out to the committee. So watch for that. I think probably a quick review of the schedule would make good sense.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we need to increase our full meetings during this phase, because it just seems like there's so much going on.
There's a lot. Yeah. Between subcommittees and information at the full committee. Yeah. Okay. So look for correspondence from us on that, everyone. And thank you again for sticking it out a little long today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Ian.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.